there's the governor position's open. It's a midterm. And I was like, well, I mean, technically, sure, it's available. And they basically said, well, we'll help you get started. Like, we don't have a whole lot of resources, but we'll help you get started. And I said, cool, if you're going to help, let's, I don't know what I'm doing, but let's do this because everybody else just wants to spend money on prisons. So sure, let's do it.
Marley or Disgruntled Flower 88 says, "Would it not have been better invested in pandemic leave payments for people who have missed work due to having COVID?"
I thoroughly agree. Would you like to hear our state's reason for allocating $400 million and not sending it to the people directly?
Tell me what Mama said, y'all. For y'all who are not aware, the governor of Alabama is this sweet old woman who everybody calls Mama Ivy, and she's got some stuff that I don't necessarily agree with, and so anyway, that's who
Yeah.
she is. But everybody calls her Mama. She's like everybody's grandma. But anyway, yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. What does the state say?
So the state's excuse, it's not even an excuse. They technically used an appropriation section of the bill. Basically, the bill says, hey, you can use it for X, Y, and Z, right? And one of those is lost revenue, and that is their excuse. So,
What?
so for anybody who's not aware, um, prisons in the U.S., not all of them, but a large chunk of them, and ours in Alabama are operated for profit. We use the labor inside the prisons, the incarcerated individuals, to do labor to. Uh, it is make profit. It's just profit for the state because all the stuff that they make can only be sold to other state or federal agencies like the Department of Defense. Kevlar is one of the things that they make inside of some of our prisons here. The other ones are things like office furniture and things like that. So if you go to a library in Alabama and they have office furniture, they more than likely bought that with prison labor, or sorry, bought those products from uh, the prison system. It's ACI, Alabama Correctional Industries, and they are the ones that resell all the products to other state agencies. So
There's a thrift store in my town. I'm not gonna name, but basically what they do is they are a rehab program
yeah,
for people. So people go into it in exchange for this rehabilitation. They have to work 6 days a week at this thrift store.
ugh,
So they get paid room and board, and then on their one off day, they get the privilege of going to church. Um, and so I don't shop there anymore. I just because that's literally slavery is what these people are
yep,
doing. Um,
yeah,
that's it's insane, and it's everywhere.
yeah, and I'll say one thing because we're streaming this to a couple other platforms through what I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the stream, and it looks like the chat isn't showing up for me on the other platforms. So if you're watching this somewhere else, I don't think I'm seeing your chats. So something went weird, and it's just showing a blank thing that says ready to display messages. So if you're if you're commenting, I'll go back and reply later. Uh,
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah, it's for the, for the rest of the world and anybody who's not aware, uh, the U.S. never actually got rid of slavery, and that's something that a lot of us who are privileged enough to not be directly impacted by the prison system either don't know or aren't aware technically. I mean, we're all aware that our people are incarcerated, and everybody, I say everybody, the vast majority of people, have the understanding that like license plates and things like that are made
Yeah, I
inside
mean
of prisons. Like
that's
that's a
kind of what
long
I knew.
running.
Like I didn't know the extent of it.
Yeah, there's a long running history of using incarcerated individuals to do labor. Most people just haven't thought about the fact that it's actually slavery, and the pushback I usually get is, well, like it's not slavery because like they did something wrong, so they're in the system. And I'm like, okay, well then you need to reread the 13th Amendment because it literally doesn't say what you think it does. There's two parts to that amendment in the U.S. federal Constitution. It's that we have abolished slavery except as punishment for a crime in which you've been duly convicted. So if you've been convicted of a crime, our country is fine with using you for slave labor. And
Hmm.
that is true in most states. Not all of them. Some of them have abolished slavery at a state level, technically. Uh, Our state is one of those. Ironically, we technically abolished slavery, but we left it open for involuntary servitude. And I don't care what you call it, it's still slavery because, and the example I give is some people are like, well, like slavery was like in our country at least, it was a lifelong debt, right? I'm like, okay, well, we have the habitual felony offender act. So if you commit 3 felonies and then commit a class or a first class felony, no, sorry, a class A felony, you automatically get life without parole. And when you hear felony, when I hear felony, before I became active in trying to understand how messed up the system is, like I thought, first, Instagram doesn't automatically take us down for using specific words like TikTok does it?
Instagram, actually, that's why I chose here. Because
Okay.
we can literally talk about more here and they won't come after you.
Okay, cool. So, and it's not, I'm not going to use, I'm not going to get into gory details, but murder, right? So if you murder someone, that is a felony. But so is burglary. So, like, if you're poor and you are trying to make ends meet and are stealing to do that, I don't think stealing's right. But I also don't think that if you steal 3 times and get caught and convicted, or get coerced into admitting that you did something, whether you did it or not, and then the 4th time, if you happen to be perceived as having a dangerous weapon, because that's one of the qualifications, a dangerous weapon. So it could be a knife. You then have a Class A felony on your record, and that means you have life without parole automatically. Not up to anybody. That is an automatic. It just happens. So, for instance, and I don't know that this is this person's case specifically, but it's a similar situation. There's an incarcerated individual named Willie that I was made aware of recently. So I looked literally yesterday. I'm able to look up the details. But the crime that they committed that they are now incarcerated for right now is a $9 theft, and they've been in for 30 to 40 years at this point. So, and that might be combined. Again, still, like, come on, guys.
For $9?
That's the most recent. Again, this is I'm speaking on a live, having heard about the case yesterday. So, first name's Willie. I don't know the last name offhand. I wrote it down in a notebook, and that's not with me right now.
I'll get together $1 to cover this man's theft, surely.
Well, no, we can't. So, God, it brings up. There's so many problems. Like this is why this is my focus. There are so many things that I have 3 main focuses. I didn't get into this. Probably should have done the normal pitch, but the 3 focuses my campaign is focused on is improving access and quality to healthcare for everybody in the state. We want to get better education and equitable education, and then
real quick about expanding healthcare.
Yeah.
Abortions.
Pro-abortion. So, like, if you have a uterus, you should get an abortion if you want or need one. Like, you do you. It's healthcare. So take care of your body. You should
Just
have.
To make that very clear.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry, Fred.
No.
Go back in.
Skin color plus beard in South. That needs to be said.
Yes, it does.
I got you.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So better quality and access to healthcare and education. We're bottom of the rungs in both of those across the country.
Are we still beating Mississippi?
It depends on which report you look at. So depending on how they're scoring, some of us have it like 47. Some of us have us at 50. It really depends on the scoring metrics. Either way, it's not good.
Being a little bit better than Mississippi was basically the only way that I was able to sleep at night.
Oh my gosh. So that those are the first 2. Healthcare and education, so better quality and access to both of those. And then fixing the slavery system that we still have that nobody wants to talk about publicly, especially politicians. Like that in October, when we talked about the COVID relief funds being spent, that not being talked about by anybody running for higher office. I'm not going to say some of the local reps aren't talking about it, because like some of them are in the counties that these are being built, and they're like, hey, we should not be doing this. But at the highest level, like the incumbent, Meemaw Ivy, is the one who's wanting to spend more money on them. So obviously she's not speaking out against it. And the candidates at the time weren't speaking about it directly. And to my knowledge, the current Democratic candidate is not speaking about it directly. It's in their platforms. It's in both of their platforms to reform the criminal justice system. But
Sounds pretty vague.
uh, meanwhile, Ivy's idea of reforming the justice system is building bigger and more prisons, because the ones we have are dilapidated. Like I'm not gonna lie, they're in a bad spot. Like the current facilities aren't great,
Yeah.
and that's why we're under investigation for or from the Department of Justice. They've literally investigated us for a couple of years and said, "Hey, you have to fix this." And what makes it worse is we've done this before 50 years ago. In the 70s, we had the same problem. Like it's eerily similar in problems in the system and what the federal government is saying. In the 70s, they actually had to take over our prison system. The federal government took it over and said, "Hey, you guys aren't fixing it, so guess what? We're going to take it over." So that's
How bad does your prison have to be for the government to be like, okay, you know the box where we keep people who have committed crimes? This is bad.
I mean, so here's an example that I heard yesterday. Again, I was speaking to somebody who's a pen pal with a bunch of people that are incarcerated currently. They're a part of an organization that's one of the things they do is they're pen pals and they try to get books to people that aren't just religious texts, because that's the predominant thing that they want to send out.
Praise. Okay, good. Yes.
And one thing they mentioned was, there was a guy who, I say a guy, it was an incarcerated individual. I don't know their gender or their sex, so we're just gonna an incarcerated individual in December of one of the years, doesn't really matter. In December, their cell was 100 degrees, so they got in trouble for trying to get out the window because they couldn't breathe because it was so hot. It was like sitting in a sauna all day, and they got in trouble for trying to not die in prison. And that brings up another point that I kind of want to I want to pull it up. So it's average deaths in Alabama prisons, because that's something that shouldn't be a large number, but per 100,000 incarcerated individuals. So that's a weird number because we only have about 30,000, but that's how you do some even math if you want to get a per capita number. It's between 2 and 300 per 100,000. So it's more like taking that into a third. So we'll say up to 100 people a year is what is at least the Interrogating Justice has listed as one of their stats.
I do have a thing to say.
Sure.
Earlier you mentioned Disgruntled Flower says, I love that you distinguish gender or sex because a lot of people use those terms interchangeably. I did want to comment on that because those are two different things.
Yep. Yeah, no, 100%.
That's one of the reasons why I started paying attention to you in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think that is tremendous.
Yeah,
So 100 people a year are dying in prison in Alabama?
If we're talking about the averages. So like they're basically trying to call attention to the fact that it's an enormous rate at which people are dying in the system, and some of it is like the heat thing we were talking about, like that stuff happens. But you also have inmate crime, which I'm not going to say is good, but it's understandable when you have two people or more who are both in a system that is traumatizing in and of itself, and then some of them are in there for crimes they potentially didn't commit. We know that happens. So let's just say there are people that are in there for crimes they didn't commit, and then you have the added trauma of being packed into facilities that weren't meant for the number of people that they have. So slight detour, where the average capacity rate is about 180% to capacity for individuals for the much room that we're supposed to have. So in some cases, we've taken warehouses and turned them into large dorms, housing hundreds of inmates. No separation, just bunk beds. Like they have. That sounds like freedom, but it sounds better. Freedom's not the right word. That was a.
It sounds better, but it's not. It can't be.
No,
like 100 dudes all together in a room. Well, that's chaos.
The problem is because the prisons are so dangerous, they are having a hard time staffing them, which is one of the problems the Department of Justice says. Is like, hey, you don't have enough people to manage what's happening, and it's kind of this. If you think about prisons from the standpoint of where they are now and think that that's the right way to do it and try to fix what we're doing, you have a chicken and egg problem. Like you have too much violence to hire people, and the people when you can't hire people, the violence gets worse and more common because there's no oversight. Like they won't say this publicly, but previous corrections officers, if that's I think that's the right term for them. It's what they call them, and previous officers who don't work there anymore, so they can say what they want. They're like, look, there are some facilities that we literally just don't even go into them. Like, I mean, we have to if something goes weird, like we're supposed to, but they're like if you have one dude who's supposed to watch 200 incarcerated people, like, you really want me to go in there? Because like,
how much money could you possibly give somebody to be like, hey, do you want to go into the scary room? There's 200 dudes in there.
Hold on.
I'm sure most of them are fine people, but there's like 10 of them who will probably try to eat your flesh. Like,
and sorry if the click clack is a little loud. I want to find this stat.
You're fine.
Because
I think.
Go ahead.
I think it's interesting that you mentioned like 100 people a year, just based on averages.
Yeah.
But imagine if they came out tomorrow and said that 100 people a year died at Walmart.
Yeah.
Like, they would change shit tomorrow.
Yep. Well, they wouldn't. Well, I can't say Alabama. The country wouldn't do it for a certain large number of people that die every year. That shouldn't. But I don't have a solution for that in Alabama. But firearms, like, there's something that has to get done. I don't have a plan personally, or for the campaign. Like
Something's got to happen.
Well,
sure.
so my problem, because people bring it up, and it's like, look, sure, we could pass something in Alabama, and it might work for. It might work, and like, I'm willing to talk to people. Like, my problem is that I don't have. I can't do everything. Like, I need other people to help me out in those places that I don't have intricate knowledge. Like, my passion, so to speak, right now is the prison and justice system, just because that's what got my attention. That's what got me riled up for whatever reason. Like, I don't have any direct connection. Like, I don't know anybody personally through it that's in the system.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
Really terrible.
But like, some people bring up infrastructure, or they bring up the firearms discussion. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, let's look at it. Let's talk about it. I don't have enough knowledge of firearms and security and mental health and just general health. Like, I don't know enough of any of that to even make an educated starting point for a policy. So you need to help me. So if you're in Alabama and you're passionate about firearms and you want to see less people die of those, let's talk. I don't have a solution. So like, I'm happy to have them. I need other people to help on that.
You're just one guy, man.
Yeah, like, and it's people don't like to hear that from their politicians, where they're like, I don't have an answer for you. Like, but like, that's kind of the point. It's supposed to be a for the people, by the people. Like, we all have to do this together, otherwise it doesn't work, because that's where we're at now. We have a small number of people who say they know what they're doing, who are making it worse for a lot of people, and they don't care. So I'm trying to look this guy up, because the numbers are astronomical, and there was one guy who, he was working as a corrections officer, and the base rate is like $32,000 a year, which isn't it's not a
what?
Like that's roughly.
Like nothing.
Yeah, well, it's more than minimum wage in our state, because we don't have a minimum wage.
Which is a different nothing.
Yeah, we don't have a minimum wage, which people get really confused when I say that. Somebody tried to call me out when I duetted a video that was showing the minimum wage. And people were like, whatever, it's $7.25. Like, I've had a job that makes $7.25 forever. And I'm like, well, then you don't understand how this works, because that's the federal minimum wage. Our state wouldn't pay you $7.25 if they didn't have to. Are you crazy? That's why we haven't passed a minimum wage. Like, we literally we passed a law in 2016 or 2018 when Birmingham was trying to increase their minimum wage as a city, and the state went, no, you guys can't do that. That's up to us. And they were like, the state has to set the minimum wage. Any lower municipality legally cannot increase their minimum wage for their jurisdiction. Companies can, right? So like, you can still get more than that, but it's up to the companies. And people were arguing. They're like, no, like, I've made $7.25 as a minimum wage forever. And I was like, yeah, okay, but no. Not because of Alabama. Not because of Alabama. They don't want to pay you that much. They do because the federal government said they have to.
I started working at Jack's Family Restaurants in 2007, making $6.30 an hour. And then I think over the next couple years we got to, is it 7.25 now is our
Yeah,
minimum wage?
yeah,
Yeah. So we got to 7.25. That was in like 2009, and that's the last time that it's changed.
yeah, yeah. It
The
hasn't
last
changed in a
time.
very long time. And so like the worst part is it's not even that it hasn't changed since 2009. There's a steep shift between productivity rates, which is what your wages should be based off of. Like if you're producing things, your wages should be uh, congruent. I think is the right word for that. Like it should kind of follow the same trajectory. And it
Yeah.
did up until about 1989, 1980, or sorry, 1979, 1980, somewhere in that range. It's very close to, if not the year Reagan was elected, so it may have been 82, but it's coincidentally maybe, and it's about the same time that Reagan got elected. And it literally, if you have a if you have a line graph, and they kind of like they shift a little bit, right? But in that period, it just does this. So productivity goes up and wages stay not stagnant, but they don't go up nearly as high. And then, like we talked about in 2009, it just stops. So it
So
hasn't gone any higher.
what would you tell the rude shouting people that will shout at you when you mention giving poor people more money? A lot of people, I think, for some reason, hate poor people. I don't understand why.
Yeah.
It's really dumb, actually. But what would you say to people who, everything's going to cost more? All the nonsense excuses that we hear all the time. What would you say?
It would be context dependent because it would depend on like
What they said?
well it would depend on like how poor they actually are. So like if we talk about this from a national level, um, all of us are poor. If you're watching this live or you're seeing this on social media, you are poor. There's a graphic that I don't remember who created it, but I think I saw it on like Robert Reich. I think I saw it on his. He used to be the
I love
Department of
him.
Labor. I think he was Department of Labor, the head of Department of Labor at some point,
Yeah.
if I got his title correctly. But there's this graph, and it shows you the relative wealth of famous people. And it may not have been Robert Reich, but that's a good account or a good person to go look at because he's
Oh yeah,
he's
I've followed
knowledgeable.
him for years. I
Uh,
like him.
but if it wasn't him, it's somebody who is also knowledgeable. But they're showing a graph of wealthy people that you're aware of. So let's say Kanye West, Oprah. Pick some wealthy people, and it basically shows you here, right? So I'm gonna use my box to try and gauge some wealth. So if you're here, right, and then Kanye and Oprah are somewhere up in this range, and then it literally scales down to here to even show someone like Bill Gates, and then it scales even further down to show at the very end it's showing either Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos, depending on which one was at top at the time. But literally at that point, you and Kanye are here. Like you are. I'm trying to make it look right. You're here, right? They're like Kanye is as close to being poor as you are compared to somebody like Jeff Bezos. Like we're all poor. The wealth is nowhere near evenly distributed, so it depends on who we're talking to. So like if I got the ear of Elon Musk, it would uh, it would be an fu. Like you shouldn't have this much money. Like you shouldn't be able to
Just
do
shouldn't,
this.
dog.
Yeah.
Like what?
Actually, a better example. Actually, I'm going to switch that to if I said Elon Musk. I think I did. I'm going to change it to Jeff Bezos, and it should
Yeah.
be you shouldn't be able to build a rocket and go to space while people are dying of poverty in our country during a
Absolutely.
pandemic, and then thank them for it. Like you shouldn't be able to do that.
And then everybody look at that dude like he's a freaking hero or something.
And
Like,
I'm using the word shouldn't, and some people don't like it, but I don't care. Like it is morally reprehensible for someone to be able to be that wealthy while we have people who are houseless and can't like get enough money to live. And that's some people don't like to hear that, and then they're like, yeah, but that's the system. That's the system we're in. They're just using the system that we're in. I'm like, okay, well, like the system's broken from a
it
societal
don't work.
from a society well from a societal good perspective, it's broken. It works really well the way it's intended. Like
Well,
it uses
that's true.
it
Yeah, it
works
does
that way.
work for the people it's intended for.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
I had a question for
I
you.
think you
Gosh, I
had
wish I knew what it
I
was.
think you had some
Oh,
questions to ask from other people, right?
what would you tell? So there's 7 people. There's 8 people actually who watch out, and the houseless are his employees at that. Yes. Anyway, what would you tell the people in this live, the people of the world? Because I mean, we got some folks from Australia, UK. Like we got a pretty good sampling of folks here.
Yeah.
How can we start changing things?
I mean, people don't like to hear this, but like the bare minimum is voting in our country at least. If you're in a different
Yes.
country, you're not gonna change that. Like we're a part of organizations as a country that are supposed to help us keep things in check. And like there's the international standards of human rights, I think is what it's called. I'm probably misquoting the title. The point is, we basically said, yeah, really good idea, and then never ratified it. Like the U.S. was like, yeah, we're a part of the United Nations. Good, yeah, that sounds great. And then we just never actually ratified it. We just said, yeah, cool. That sounds great in the meeting. And then we were like, no, we're not going to do it. But like, that's a good idea. That actually, you know what? That would benefit everybody in our country. We're not going to do it, but yeah. And one of those, we mentioned houseless people, and that's why I bring it up, is one of the pieces of that standard of human rights for the international community is housing. Like everybody should have access to housing. 'Cause that's shelter. It's a human. Like you literally can't survive if you don't have shelter. The weather is atrocious when we aren't making it worse as a species. It's already bad enough. It's getting worse now. So like that's something that should be a human right. We should find some way to house people who even if they can't afford it. And that
Yes, absolutely.
that ties into man, it ties into one of the. It's a hashtag that I use regularly, but it's a phrase I enjoy using because it's people over profit. Because
Yeah.
it ties into every decision that we could make as a government. Like it's because of the system we work in. Profit is always something that has its tentacles in our systems. So like we have to consciously make a decision to either prioritize people or profit, because the point of making profit is to make as much as possible without intervention at any cost. Like that's the way. Literally, they're people whose jobs they're responsible to make as much profit as possible. Like that is their job, is to make as much money as possible for their company. Like a publicly traded corporation, their job is to make as much money for their shareholders. That is their job. So when that publicly traded company is, I don't know, let's say, well, it doesn't have to be publicly traded, but if it is, their job is to make money. So if they're providing a product or service that is a human right, let's say it's, I don't know, food. Um, their job is to make as much money off of that food as possible. Whether or not everyone can afford it is a different question. And that's, to me, if it's a human right like that, there should be something preventing people from. I'm not going to say from profiting because we're in a system that you can, like, that's the deal. But there should be some way of preventing them from restricting access to people who don't have enough money. So
I mean, there's got to be a way for these people to still make gobs of money and like help people. Like it has to be possible.
yeah, but nothing's making them do it right now. So
That's
and like
that's true. Nobody's gonna voluntarily decide. Yes, I'm gonna make a few less $1 million.
well, and it's well no, because that's what I mean. So like I'm not putting this on. I'm not going to put this on the individuals in most cases. There are a few, and those are the ones that we were talking about earlier that are at the very, 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 very top. That literally, like, they could not spend their wealth if they wanted to. And if you don't believe me, there, go look at Jeff Bezos's ex-wife, who got a good chunk of money when they separated, and she is
just became the richest woman in the world, right?
they got divorced and she became the richest woman in the world or something along those lines. Yeah. And she, from what I understand, at least the way it's reported, I'll say that, she immediately tried to start spending it and is getting more in interest and dividends than she can spend. So she's trying to and still getting more. And it's like that should tell us that uh, it's not there to end up helping people if you can't get rid of it quick enough. I mean, you could get rid of it, like you could just let it go, but if you are in a system where if you don't have money you end up dying, I don't blame that person for trying to live, and then the problem is they end up getting um, so entrenched in that mindset that they, by the time you get a certain amount of wealth, like you no longer think about things like an average human being. Like it shifts the way you think about things. So like I don't blame most of them. I don't care if you make $1 million. Like you're still poor compared to the other people. So like I don't even blame you. Um, if you want $1 million and we can find a way for you to have $1 million, but people not die because they don't have money, then sure, have $1 million. Like that's fine. I don't think
That's gotta be right.
yeah, I don't think they are the problem. The system as a whole is where the concern is, and like how we fix it, different question. As a governor, I can't fix that, so it's not something I'm going to try and propose. But just everybody watching, the 7 people that are here, and whoever's watching on the other platforms, I don't have stats for because I'm doing this differently. Know that I care about people before profit. And if you're a business owner, I care about you and your employees and your customers or clients or whatever you want to call them, because people have different terms to try and make it more, people friendly. But like the people that make your job and your company possible, I put them above the entity that is your business. And ideally, what people sometimes don't make the connection on is if that's the case and your business is serving those people, you will be around. Like if you are there to provide a service that people need or want, and we are taking care of the people, they are there. They're still alive to want or need your service. So I don't. There shouldn't be a conflict of interest there. People take it as a personal attack sometimes for some reason. And I'm like, hey, I don't care about your business as an entity. It's not that I don't care about you or your employees or your customers. Like I want all of those people to have a life of dignity.
Yes.
And if they're still here and can live a life of dignity, then they can buy your product or service, and you can stay in business and you can do your thing. So
If you have a business and your employees are starving, I hope your business closes.
yeah, so I mean, FDR. I think was it FDR that implemented the minimum wage originally, right after the recession. Yeah, and like he basically said the same thing. It was like the minimum wage should provide a decent living, not this. The weird thing that people now think it should be. For some reason, people think the minimum wage should be a way to scrape by, and I get that that's what you think, but that's never what it was intended for. So like it's weird that you think people should like starve and scrape by. I don't, and neither do the people who put this policy in place in the first place. It's been, for lack of better terms, it's been bastardized to not do what it was intended to do. And we've got to figure out a way to fix that. And unfortunately, in like saying all this, Felicity, my comments are working. Cool. Felicity, good morning. They are showing up. So if you've watched this from the beginning, my bad. You just need to comment more. Be
engaged.
Yeah. So what was I gonna say? I got distracted by Felicity. It's okay. I'm not upset. Just I'm trying to remember what I was gonna say. As Alabama's governor, right? Our state we have using our constitution have made it very hard to change things for the better of people. As an example, like Alabama, we have international audience still, so that's this is going to be another tidbit that might be confusing / a WTF moment. Our constitution in Alabama is the longest, like by wordage, is the longest constitution in the industrialized world, I think is the way that people are phrasing it. It's been around since 1901, and we have 977 amendments. The last time that the count was done, it's 977 amendments since 1901. And why that happens is we use our constitution as the store all for practically everything, and that's down to like tax rates, some public office pay rates. Like it's in the Constitution. It's not something that's like we can just, as governor, I can't. As much as I think it would be a way to prove a point. I don't think, from the research I've done so far, still looking into it because I'm not elected yet. I don't think I can come in.
Yet?
Yeah, I don't think I can come in and say, hey, guess what, legislature. Some of you guys are cool. So like if you're following me, I follow a couple people and we engage together as candidates, and like I love you and I want you to keep doing your thing, but if I could, I would come in and just say, "Hey, cool. I know that everybody right now gets paid $54,000 a year or so, or sorry, $54,000 a year for their job in the legislature, which that's a large sum. Like it's more than the minimum wage at fifteen
There
thousand
is,
dollars,
yeah.
right? The thing that people don't connect is they are getting paid to be in session, and that's like the minimum, or sorry, the maximum regular session thing is like 30 days. Like it's like somewhere around 30 days. So like if you take that money and divide it by the number of days that they are expected to be in session without special sessions, Corey, Corey, I love you. He's one of the candidates I was talking about. Actually, that's funny that he jumped in. That Corey, if you want to correct me, please do. But it's like 30 days that you're expected to be in session, right? There's a maximum that like a regular session would be. I think it's 30 days. And if you take the pay rate and divide it by the number of days they're in session, it turns out to be like $90 an hour, and it's like an idea for proving a point. At least I don't think I can do it, but to prove a point would be cool. You all make minimum wage, and that ends up being like $1,400 or whatever it is. It's like, let's be real.
Let
Like,
them try it out
yeah,
just for a month,
like
just to see.
this is what you have. This is what you have voted for our constituents, the entire state. You have said you are not allowed to make more than the federal minimum wage because we haven't set one ourselves. So how about you try that on? And like it wouldn't actually hurt most of them because most of them have other jobs, and this is the side gig, so to speak. I say that. If I'm wrong, let me know. But that's my perspective as a lay person who got so pissed they decided to run. I'm not saying all of them have side or regular jobs, but anyway, it would probably impact some of them, unfortunately. But that hopefully would be an encouragement to pass some legislation that doesn't put all of our people in a situation where they end up houseless. So
I have a few questions for you, and then I am gonna go because I do have to go to work.
so do I. Yeah, I'm supposed to leave in about 13 minutes. My job,
Oh,
thankfully,
perfect.
is really
Yeah.
flexible. It's been very nice. Yeah. So
So
somebody, Felicity said
you
minimum wage needs to
mentioned,
go up, but
uh,
go ahead.
oh,
No, you
you
have
mentioned
questions.
earlier, affordable healthcare for all people.
Yeah.
You also have the progressive pride flag on your display pic, which I thought was cool. Um, as a heterosexual man, what do you think about the gays? Like, just tell me about them.
Yeah.
Do you care about queer people all the time, or
I
just
do.
during Pride?
Yeah, no, I do. This badge has been up for at least on the campaign profiles. So on Facebook, I have a page and a profile. So I want to make the distinctions in case anybody's following the profile and not the page. The profile has the just black beard icon mark. The page has the Progress Pride beard. But everywhere else, the Progress Pride beard has been in play for months now, just because it's something that needs to be put at the forefront of the campaign. Because again, white heterosexual man in the South with a beard and a bald head, like I like if I showed up like this, I immediately would not get listened to by a large group of people. And I need them to hear me. I want to talk to the people who wouldn't listen to me looking like this. The people that would listen to me, we can talk later, but I need to talk to the people that wouldn't at first. So I'll keep wearing the hat. The beard is an attention getter, so I keep it longer than my wife would like. But we will deal with that later. So yeah, the gays was it? Was it she's, gays, and theys? Is that the common vernacular that people like to use, like the funny, not funny, but the
what do they say?
He's, theys, and gays.
Girls,
gays, and theys.
Nice.
Yeah, it's girls, gays, and theys. So like, I love you all. Like you are all humans, and I want all of you to have the life of dignity that you deserve. Unfortunately, our state doesn't feel the same as a government currently. I'm not going to say all the officials, but because there are people who are fighting for you, it's just not nearly enough.
It's
and
pretty nasty
yeah,
in Alabama specifically. Um,
it is.
I think that's one of the reasons why it's very important. That's why I asked you that question.
Mm-hmm.
I understand looking like this and people thinking that I'm a certain way, so I have deliberately gayed up my appearance,
Right.
right? So that I can show that I am a safe man. Because people still see my videos and they come in and assume that I'm like a type of person just because I'm a fat white guy with
Right.
facial hair, right?
And in the South, like all of
In the
those
South, yeah,
combined.
they're just like, oh, that guy is the devil. We don't like him.
Yeah, and the crazy part is like some of the people from marginalized communities. There's some Black creators that I follow that are in the South, and they're like, "Look, I've lived in the North, and I'd actually rather live here because at least here they say it to your face." And I'm like, you know what? That's I can respect that opinion as much as I hate that you have to deal with it face to face regularly. Like I understand wanting the bluntness, so you understand where you stand with people, rather than like some niceties that turn into ways that, or it turns into like treatment that you wouldn't expect because you thought you were good, like you thought you you were friends with them or at least friendly with them, and really they don't think you should exist as a person, and that sucks.
It's a very like commonly held belief, and people will. God, this audio is trash. People will sugarcoat it and make it all nice and be like, "Oh, this is really for the best," and I hate it.
Yeah. Do you because what I don't it's your live, like I'm here as your guest. But if you have any other questions, I want you to ask them. But before I leave on that lines, along those lines of the niceties and things being hidden, I want to bring something up. But go ahead and finish any questions that you have, and then I'm gonna try and get my keyboard to type on my computer while we're chatting, so I can read something to everybody.
Okay. Amanda with Magic says she's in Daphne, or they're in Daphne, and can vouch for Jared. He isn't just pandering to us as a campaign strategy. I think that's amazing.
Amanda, thank you for being here, and thank you for your long term. I'm going to say friendship. We don't talk to each other nearly enough. We both have families and kids and business, and that takes, unfortunately, takes a lot of time away from the stuff we would rather be doing. But I appreciate it. Like that, it means the world to me that you are here and at 8:20 in the morning, hanging out with us and giving me some support. So I appreciate it.
As I mentioned earlier on our call, it's my general belief, and maybe the belief of others, that politicians are evil. Um, and I think that's bad because the idea of a politician it didn't start out as an evil person. And I think talking to you and learning a little bit more about it, you definitely seem less evil.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I appreciate it. So I will. I'm going to say it this way. I think the description of a politician doesn't sound evil. The founding of our political system was, and it is understandable why it has gotten as bad as it has, because it was never intended for everybody to be a part of. And that, man, if I may, that leads perfectly into what I was going to read. If you have another question, please say it. But
No, I'm good. Go get him. Get up on your soapbox.
Yeah.
Let's say some stuff. Come on, buddy.
TechOrc on Twitch. You'll probably see this in 30 seconds. This is live. Yeah, I'm screen sharing from my phone. And you're seeing notifications come in as they happen because I'm literally screen sharing the whole thing. But yeah, it is live. So I mentioned earlier our Constitution, right? It was written in 1901. That is post Civil War by, what does that turn into? 36 years, whatever the number is. And pre both world wars, but definitely pre any kind of getting rid of the perception of racism. It's still here, but the niceties when that got implemented. We had a constitutional convention. So the way you rewrite the Constitution, everybody gets together and says, "Hey, we're going to make a new one," and then you spend a certain amount of time. This one happens to be 52 days, but they spent 2 months getting together every so often to rewrite the Constitution. So in day one, they get together, and I'm not going to read day one, but it's a roll call. So they have, hey, everybody's here, cool. Here's what here. Everybody's here. Cool. Accounted for. See you tomorrow. And day 2 is kind of the all right. Why are we here? So they open up with a prayer. It's 1901, so whatever. They open up with a prayer and they elect the permanent president for the conventional. The Constitutional Convention. They're like, hey, we have a permanent president for the entire duration. We're not going to shift it up periodically. It's one person. And then they kind of open it up from there. And I'm gonna read a couple paragraphs. In between are some very racist language. So like I don't feel comfortable reading that on air without intention. So and it's not important currently. The language is, so go read it, and I'll tell you how in a second. But the importance of the issue, they put in some headers. I'm reading this from the state's website, for the record. This isn't some random like WordPress blog or something else. It's not.
No, this is our government website.
Yeah, it's a government hosted page for historical accuracy. They're putting up the proceedings, the notes for the proceedings. So the importance of the issue, and then the last paragraph for this says. One has studied the history of recent events to very little purpose who has failed to discover that race prejudice exists at the North in as pronounced a form as it is in the South, and that the question of Negro domination, when brought home, will arise the same opposition in either section. So North and South, it's going to be a problem either way. And what is it we want to do? Why are we here? Why it is within the limits of the limits imposed by the federal Constitution to establish white supremacy in this state. This is our problem, and we should be permitted to deal with it unobstructed by outside influences, with a sense of responsibility as citizens and our duty to posterity. So, literally, like, if I were reading this straight from day 2, the top of the proceedings, I would have gotten there within 5 minutes. So, like, we're not skipping a bunch of context. You can go look at it in a minute. But I want to jump ahead a little bit. They tell a story, if anybody's familiar with the Bible, the story of the prodigal son. Take that story, but instead of the son taking his inheritance, let's say he was set free from his household and wandered north and was treated poorly and not squandered his money. He was treated poorly and came home to a loving environment where he was welcomed back and told to go to the kitchen and get some food because he had found his home. That's the context. And then from there, they say this. Let me scroll down a little bit. Where did it go? Come on. Sorry, there is a bit about northern interference. So there's northern interference, the prodigal son story, and then this little section here. But if we were to have white supremacy, we must establish it by law and not by force or fraud. If you teach your boy that it is right to buy a vote, it is an easy step for him to learn to use money to bribe or corrupt officials or trustees of any class. If you teach your boy it is right to steal votes, it is an easy step for him to believe that it is right to steal whatever he may need or greatly desire. The results of such an influence will enter every branch of society. It will reach your bank cashiers and affect positions of trust in every department, and it will ultimately enter your courts and affect the administrations of justice. So, our entire Constitution was written to instill white supremacy into our state at a base level. So, and I mentioned earlier, and this is why I bring this up, we put everything in the Constitution. Not everything, but like if we
put that in the Constitution.
Well, so yeah. that's the proceedings. So those are the meeting notes while they're writing it. So they're like,
oh my God.
That's like, hey, why are we here? Like, oh no, we want to put white supremacy into the state. Like we got to stop this whole northern aggression and like the Negroes. We got to stop that. Like we can't let them. There's a point where they're like, hey, and black people shouldn't be elected into politics because either they're not smart enough or they don't have enough experience. Like that's
real
a
quick. If
paraphrase.
You're coming into this live, we are discussing something from Alabama's state government.
Yeah.
These are not our opinions.
We do not view these.
Quick.
Yeah, we do not believe these. These two guys
agree.
don't. But that was a reading from the proceedings for the Constitutional Convention of Alabama in 1901, which is the Constitution we still use to this day. And my point though is that we have 977 amendments because if we think something's important, we put it in the Constitution to enact it into law, so it's very hard to get rid of. but the whole premise of the current Constitution is white supremacy. So when people are like, "Hey, we should," right now there's I think we passed in one of the sides, either in the House and the Senate or just the House, we passed a bill to rewrite the Constitution, not not like come up with a new one, but just reorganize so things make sense because there's 977 amendments, but to remove racist language. And like at first when I saw that, before I saw this, I was like, oh, like that's cool. They're going to remove racist language. That sounds like a great idea. And then I find this and I'm like, oh no, we're just obscuring it more. Like intentionally or not, like the people who voted for it, I think it was a pretty bipartisan vote from what I recall. But what we unintentionally are now doing is obscuring the reason it was written in the first place. If we remove all the racist language, it's not as easy for everyday people who, if they want to read the Constitution, to know that it is literally just like it's the white supremacy handbook for our state. And it's
I feel so stupid.
No,
because
please
I
don't.
voted in that election.
Yeah.
To remove the racist language.
Not your fault.
Wow, this is a really good idea.
Yeah, not your fault. Like that, literally, that's not. And I'm not like I don't even know. I'm not sure how many of the politicians know this because here's the crazy part. Not crazy. I shouldn't use that term regularly. Like that's a. Anyway.
Bizarre.
Well, yeah. Here's the bizarro scenario. That is posted on the state website. Like if you, I'll show you. I'll tell you to find it. It's not terribly hard, but. I found it by looking up something else about our Constitution. So I happened upon the Wikipedia page first, because that's not a bad place to start, and then find the sources and kind of dig through and find the actual real information, because Wikipedia is editable, so it could be a troll trying to add content, and it just didn't get caught by the mods, right? So I was looking at that, and they quoted one of those paragraphs that I read out loud. And they put a footnote, and they're like, hey, number 9, go check it out. So if you want to, go look up the Wikipedia article on the Constitution of Alabama, scroll to the footnotes, and look for the one that says day 2 of 52, and I think it's number 9. I don't have the Wikipedia article up. I have this page bookmarked. My point is, that's the only way I can find this page. Like, I can't, there's no navigation. It's just a straight HTML page for day 2. Now, you can change because it's straight HTML, the web page language, you can change the day number in the URL and go to another day, but there's no way to get through the entire thing without manually going up and like changing the day. And I can't find. Google's pretty good about finding information, right? Like that's its job. If you search for, at least when I did, I tried to search for an excerpt. I tried to take direct quote and search for this, and this page doesn't show up anywhere. Like Wikipedia does, but it doesn't show up. This page doesn't show up in Google. So like, and there are ways of telling Google, hey, don't display this page. So like, I have to guess that that's what's happening. I am not I work for an agency that builds websites, but I don't build them myself. So yeah, whether or not that's actually what's happening, don't know, but I know enough to know that a government website should be at the top of the list if you're asking something about that site specifically.
Absolutely.
So, and then I saw Amanda. I saw your comment. I will happily post that probably later today. Do you want me to read it, or do you want me just to screenshot it?
When we get done with this, I can have it just posted on my page. So on that post, if you would later today, just comment that link so that people can go to it.
Yeah, on Instagram you can't really click the link, but I can.
That's valid. Okay, never mind.
Well, I can do it as a proof of like where things are, so they know what they're going to. But really, just saying Wikipedia article of the Constitution, footnote number 9, and people like it's not hard to find if you know the steps to get there. It's not hard to do. Yeah.
Yeah, just do a little 1, 2, 3, 4 profit.
Yep.
Do a little list. I think that would be huge. Jared, as we discussed, we got to go.
Yeah.
So if you want to tell everybody again who you are, what you're doing, we'll close this thing out.
Sweet. Appreciate it. My name is Jared Budlong. I am running as an independent candidate here in Alabama for governor. A quick tidbit, we have 2 other candidates officially. We have a Republican and a Democrat. They are both pro-life. I am pro-abortion. That's a hot topic, so I want to make sure people know that a white dude from the South with a beard and a bald head supports everybody with a uterus and their right to health care regardless if you need or want it. That's your choice, and you should be able to do that. And all of my LGBTQIA plus community, I'm sorry for our state's behavior, and I will do my best to prevent anything further from happening and push back as hard as I can. I don't have ultimate control, but I can do it. I'll do my best to fight against it. So.
Well, it has been a pleasure talking with you this morning, and it has been frustrating, and I feel like such a fool, and I cannot wait to help you going forward.
Appreciate it. Don't feel like a fool. Like, even I saw somebody else in the comments. Don't feel like a fool. That again, I don't even think some of the politicians who proposed it understand what they just did. I didn't either. I found it by happenstance. It was accidental. I found it and was like, oh no. Like, I knew I knew the Constitution was problematic. I knew the state was problematic. What I didn't give credit to was the racists in 1901 were lawyers. They're smart racists. They weren't dumb.
The most dangerous racists.
I made the assumption that they were dumb racists, but I didn't think about the fact that they were lawyers. Like, they weren't dumb. They were just horrible, immoral people. So, they did it, and I don't think there's a way to undo this quickly. We as a public can't ask our state to do anything with the Constitution ourselves. The legislature has to propose it. So, like, we have to, and that's why I said, like, the bare minimum is going out and voting. Without other actions that I do not want to promote, because I think we can still do this a different way, less people will be harmed if we do it through voting. I'm not saying no one will be harmed, because it takes a little while, but I think less people will be harmed if we do this through the system currently. I don't think we've gotten far enough not to. I'm hoping we have.
All right, brother man. I'm going to let you go. I hope that you have a fantastic day. Thank you so much for talking to me this morning.
Thanks for having me on.
Bye, buddy.
Appreciate it. Bye. I got to figure out how to end my other live. If you're watching on another platform, you can still hear me. Obviously, it says that I ended, and my mouse won't go to my other screen, so I can't end this for some reason. I don't know my quick commands. Oh, no. I can't end the stream everywhere else. Somebody hang out. TechOrc, you're welcome. And yes, it's incredibly wild. If you're still watching, even though it's frozen, support will be going to the website. Head to the website. You can donate, like you mentioned. You can also volunteer time if that's something you have available. I know it's a precious commodity currently. So if you don't have time, you don't have time. But I would love your help in any way you can. And as soon as my mouse connects, I'm gonna end the stream. There it is. All right. Thanks, everybody. You can't see my face, but hopefully you can still hear me.